sure that they have drones up. They have the place surrounded at this point.
Well, I'm sure, too, it was a split-second decision. If they saw her through a window, she likely saw them through a window. You know what I mean? Like, why is she running away from the front door into another room and shutting the door? But obviously, she's aware.
But my point is that it was planned. You planned to go into a place house. That's how you. It's not something you don't really decide. Okay, well, we're going to knock and hope she answers the door. Now we're going to knock the door in. No, it was that's from the planning phases. They were going for that purpose.
Well, actually, what I read was that they did knock on the door. They breached the gate, but then they knocked on the door and asked her to open the door, and she refused.
You know why they do that though? That's feds. Yeah. They always knock before they.
Right.
They have to.
Right.
Unlike us, and I this is what I've. When I worked with FBI before.
Right.
They have a weird thing where they have to knock and identify themselves. I promise you, there was no intention whatsoever. It's not the way it sounds. Right. It's not a, hey, can you come open the door? No, it's a boom, 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 FBI.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking at.
See, that's why it's important to have conversations with people who know.
Yeah.
Because we read it in the newspaper.
Yeah.
And I have no information that would tell me that my impression of that is wrong.
And it may be the best case scenario for that knock on a door. It may have been a doo-doo-doo FBI.
Yeah.
Doo-doo-doo FBI.
Yeah.
Hit it. Boom.
Yeah.
That's the slowest that's going to happen.
Yeah.
If I had to bet you money on this case, like with any other FBI or federal warrant,
this was already...
the dude's reared back with her at the same time. Boom, 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 FBI, open the door.
Yeah.
And they're inside. And especially if they've already seen her running.
Right.
I guarantee you, if they had intended on going, doo-doo-doo, FBI, doo-doo, FBI, no, knock it, which they would have been doing, once they saw her running, then it was like they were knocking as that ram was back and coming into the door. It was probably that fast. But they found her, two things that were interesting. Two things that were interesting is they found her phone was wrapped in tinfoil, which was, her misguided attempts to not be able to track her.
Right.
But that does say something about her, that she had studied, even if it was misplaced information, she had studied ways to hide.
Yeah.
Okay, so she was educating herself, or her the person who was her hired ex-British military security guy had told her to do that or had her do that. In this situation, that was pretty much futile as far as the way things are done technologically. That tinfoil shit is not going to work. But anyway, having her shit on, if she'd had it on, put it on airplane mode, put it in something real, whatever, you know, maybe. It just depends on how they're doing it. But that's how they got her. Another important thing that I didn't know where her passports were too. Everyone kept saying she had 3 passports, but they never said what to wear.
Right.
Well, it's important to notice that one of the reasons why the prosecution is so concerned about the passports is one of them is a French passport.
Yeah, that makes a difference.
And that is a non-extraditionary country.
Right.
France doesn't have to do it.
Which is so surprising to me that we don't have an extradition agreement with France.
I was actually going to ask you if you knew anything about why we might not, because I had no idea.
I think France is one of those countries that will not...
French Foreign Legion, just keep that in mind.
Okay, but will not, modern times, will... And I may be wrong about this, so you guys know, you hear this, you can correct me. But there are a lot of countries that will not extradite somebody who is eligible for the death penalty.
Yeah.
But I think in France's case, they won't even make an extradition agreement with a country that has the death penalty. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they won't have one with the United States because we have the death penalty. Not that Ghislaine Maxwell is eligible for the death penalty for any of the crimes for which she's been accused.
Yeah.
She's not. So Roman Polanski, for instance, after he pleads guilty to raping a 12-year-old girl, lives the rest of his life in France and continues making films.
Yep.
And there's nothing we can do about it.
Rosemary Baby, that's who we're talking about.
Yeah, and so you guys can look that up if you want to go down that particular rabbit hole, although I think it's related to other things we might talk about.
Yeah, we're going to talk about them.
So yeah, I think that might be the case with France.
But it's interesting too because the reason why I said French Foreign Legion is because they are still current. In fact, they still operate all over the world in Iraq, and they don't currently, and I don't know how new this is. It used to be like a complete, didn't matter what you did, you could go to French Foreign Legion, and part of that was you restart your life. They give you a new identity, they give you a new passport. They still do all that.
Right.
They have stricter, at least officially, they have stricter things, as far as who you can be and getting in and whatever. But at the time, that they didn't extradite, and I remember talking to French soldiers, and they was explaining that. It was like, they don't, not the extradition thing, but it makes sense that if you come to France and you do certain things, they protect you. And they brought up the French Foreign Legion.
Right.
Hearing that France doesn't extradite, it would make sense because those two things would have to be
that
would have to be part of it. That France is a non-extraditionary country, therefore the Foreign Legion could bring you in and not be expected if someone said, hey, he was a Marine before he became a French Foreign Legionnaire, and he also murdered 16 people.
Right.
Now I'm sure that would happen. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't. So yeah, I think that's one of the things. And the other thing, her attorneys are asking for her to be allowed to, have an ankle bracelet and be under house arrest because of COVID-19. Yep. And the question there is, why should she be treated any differently than any other person who's been accused of similar level of federal crimes that she's been accused of? So we'll see how that turns out. I'll be surprised if she gets out for bail.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be offered because she is super rich or has access to funds.
She has access to about 20 million.
Yeah.
Has about 4 million, and I think 4 and 2 million in actual bank accounts of hers.
Yeah.
One in a French bank account, I believe, and one in a British.
And that's another part of the argument by the prosecution about why she's a flight risk, because she has, since she went into hiding, she's opened 20 more bank accounts, and she's been shifting money around. You know what I mean? Like that's part of what the FBI already knows she's been doing.
Yeah,
because they've been tracking her.
They believe that she is training and prepared for hiding.
Yeah,
that's actually what it says.
Yeah.
If you look at the stuff, it says one of the reasons is she's.
I'll be really surprised. And something we touched on last time that I wanted to go back to a little bit when we were talking about the crimes that she's been accused of. One of the things I read said that, actually, I think it was the attorney, what's his name, that sort of wrote an article defending her. He said, the statute of limitations might turn out to be a problem. And I wanted to clarify what happened with the statute of limitations on these crimes. Because when these crimes were committed, the statute of limitations read one way. Then legislation in Congress in 2003, I believe, changed the language of the statute of limitations.
Okay.
So it used to be, if you were a minor and you had these kinds of crimes committed against you, you had until the age of X or 10 years, whatever was longer. Well, the age of X was changed to lifetime.
Which is why some people say there's no statute of limitations.
Well, there is, because the reason it says lifetime is that's in the case of, from the time, but here's the crucial part about the crimes that she's been accused of and that she's been charged with.
Yeah.
If the girls that have been willing to testify and that are victim 1, victim 2, victim 3, if the victims that have been identified in the indictment, if they were under 25 in 2003 when the legislation passed, then the statute of limitations, the new statute of limitations, applies to them. If they were over 18 in 2003, because we're talking about crimes that got committed back in 1994, 95, 96. If they were over 18 at that time, it might not. So it's going to come down to a case-by-case basis with the victims, whether charges will get thrown out. But they knew this already. They already know. That's why I'm saying. If I hemmed and hawed last time, we talked about it a little bit about whether the statute of limitations, I've since decided, one, they wouldn't have brought the charges unless they were absolutely dead certain that the statute wasn't going to work against them and all of that stuff. So
so I would hope so. At the same time, like we talked about earlier, the whole open-ended agreement. What am I trying to say? The immunity thing.
Exactly.
It's like this stuff was handled so badly originally that they're fighting. They're gonna have to fight over that, and she's gonna have she's gonna have a crack
team of attorneys.
I want to say this on the record right now. Everyone right now she's guilty. Okay? Right. Everyone right now, she's guilty.
Right. By
the time they're done with her.
Yeah.
I challenge you, let's come back to this in 2 months.
Yeah.
Or, as the trial starts unfolding. Her money, the media, they're going to start downplaying her.
Yeah.
And I promise you, in 3 or 4 months, by the time this goes to trial, the publicity campaign on her favor is going to have to change a lot of people's mind. I think it's going to go through a few phases. I think people are going to stop kind of being so aggressive towards her because, she's going to, I think she's working with. I think she flipped. I think she's changed. I think whatever. She wasn't really that involved. It was only a few years. These girls are lying about her involvement. They were this. They were prostitutes. They were whores. They were this right here.
Right.
They are going to attack the sources so hard, but by the end of this, the defense and a lot of people in the media and a lot of people watching this, and you're going to start seeing it, are going to start saying it really wasn't so much Ghislaine Maxwell. It was really just Epstein because he's dead. And I see her being downplayed. I just want to get down the record because when it starts happening, I'm going to say go back to Tuesday, and I said this was going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some people saying, she's got a lot of money to spend on lawyers, and they're going to be good.
Sure. And
publicists, not just trial stuff. It's going to start.
And, there are different ways to look at it. On the one hand, last time I pointed out she didn't leave the country, interestingly, even though she has a French passport and could have, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that indicates that she was working with.
Well, I saw another article that said she's left the country up to 36 times.
Right.
Is that true?
Oh, who knows? How do
you leave the country 36 times if you're under?
Exactly.
I know she wasn't under arrest or even, but
if she is working with, then maybe the raid that we saw and the arrest that we saw was for show.
Oh no! Just for clarity, I thought it was for show. Yeah. I don't think. Well, it still could have been planned for show. I think when they saw her running it, if it was for show, it changed. It got real quick.
Right.
But I have no problem believing it was for show. I have no problem believing she's working with attorneys. I also believe she's 100% a monster and she's completely guilty of this stuff, and that she is going to. You know what I'm saying? So I think that those things are true.
Right.
But I think they're going to be highlighted. They're going to spin it to where, look, she's been working with authorities. She was only involved in with Jeffrey Epstein for this time to this time, and this didn't start until this time, so she wasn't involved then, and yada yada yada. And I think it's going to be a big, diversion thing. My opinion about these people is like my opinion about other conspiracies, and that is, for instance, Lee Harvey Oswald. People always say, people ask me, do you think Lee Harvey Oswald killed President Kennedy? I think it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
100%. I don't think he worked alone in the concept and planning phase.
Right.
Did he shoot him by himself? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
There's some weird stuff about it, but I don't know. But I've never doubted that he was the person. If I'm behind something and I want the President of the United States killed, and I can find some guy like him to do it, and I think he can pull it off,
right?
Then that's a win for everybody. You know what I mean? I still think there could be a conspiracy. I don't think it means that there was a CIA hit team that triangulated a shot on, the moon landing. And I know we're getting off subject, but we got all the time in the world. And we're going to get back to all these notes here because I know you got a lot of good shit here.
Well, it's not a lot. It's just I've been thinking about this, and all of it dovetails. You know what I mean? Like it all kind of connects together in that eyes wide shut kind of way.
Good. What I wanted to talk about, with the moon, I don't want to say this because this is off the subject, but like I said, we don't really have a whatever. People ask me, about the moon landing stuff because I've looked into all that stuff too. I think I've said this before, but you know the main reason no one ever talks about why I believe 100% we went to the moon? This is the reason. Everyone talks about, can you prove this, lighting this, ships, all this stuff.
Right.
Let me break it down though. This is the simplest way. This is not Neil Tyson deGrasse, but this is his type of logic.
Right.
It's real simple. How many times did we go to the moon? Right, how many times do we claim we went to the moon? Apollo 11, right? 12, 13 didn't make it. 14, 15, and was there 16? I don't know, like 5 times?
Right.
I may be wrong on that.
Right.
I'm not a historian. It doesn't require a historian to use some common sense on this.
Right.
If you're going to fake going to the moon,
right,
the biggest concern, and these were NASA engineers, so you can't tell me engineers, not one in whatever it was, 10,000, 100,000 NASA engineers that required to make this feat happen over 10 years. So it's going to cross a lot of them's mind that this doesn't just have to be pulled off perfectly, it has to age well.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
We can't have, in 50 years, when we really do go to the moon, we can't have them going to the moon and realizing we screwed something up real bad and that's not the way it really is. All right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It has to age well, guys.
Yeah.
So let's just pretend that we got 100,000 scientists and hoaxers together. I'll even take the big conspiracy, the main conspiracy. Let's just say we figured out a way to keep everyone else in the dark, and maybe there was 100 people that knew we weren't actually, whatever they say it was.
Yeah.
And we figured out, listen, all the details, the film, we got to make sure the film ages well, the props, we got to make sure, like, what if in 2020 they come up with some technology that can, undo film and figure some shit.
Right.
Like, you just don't know, right?
Right.
You just don't know. If you're going to go through all the trouble to get all that right, you better do that shit only once.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You do that shit once. You say, we went to the moon, we made it, boom, it's over with. You don't go back 5 times and repeat those risks over and over and over and involve more people and more chance